What's up, everyone? Welcome in. It is that time of week. It is the Sooners on SI podcast. I am Ryan Chapman, hanging out here in More America on a South Carolina week. We got the usual squad together. We got the great John Hoover back up north, 918 Hoove, Big 12 hater Hoove. What's up, dog? How are you?
Feel like I should be 907 Hoops since I come from Alaska.
Well, you currently reside in the 918, and
That's
I
true.
remember that one because I don't often have to deal with Alaskan area codes, basically. We got our man Carson Field, who is still decompressing from his first experience of fried food at the State Fair of Texas. And what's up? How are you this week?
Doing great. Still catching up on a little bit of sleep. Obviously, it was a big commitment for all of us last week with the Red River rivalry. But glad to be back. Big game this week, too.
Big one, gotta have it. I don't know if it's a must win, but it's a gotta have it. However you fall on that. We'll break into all of that. We got a man who had no fair food last weekend and got to experience zero of the brand new press box. And that's the end. I'll talk about the press box because I know nobody cares. But Aber, you missed a treat with the new press box.
Yeah, I was a little bit jealous hearing about the easy trek to the post-game presser. Didn't have to wade through all those people, but it was also really nice not to have to deal with the fair traffic afterwards.
Yeah, well, Carson and I will have some fair traffic this weekend, apparently. I've had multiple parking charts sent my way for Oklahoma, South Carolina. And while it's the State Fair in South Carolina, it looks more like a carnival compared to what we're certainly with the Texas State Fair, but the Oklahoma State Fair, the one that sets up in OKC, we are very used to. That's Ryan Aber, by the way. I forgot the Ryan. That's a, you know it, you love it. Welcome on in.
Hey, if you've never been a salmon swimming upstream or a sports writer trying to get to the OU Texas post-game press conference, you have no idea what Ryan's talking about. 92,000 people coming at you, and you're just like, I just got to get through another 50 feet. It was so bad. The new press box.
If OU is getting blown out,
yeah,
it's generally a lot easier. But if it's a close game,
or they win,
it's an absolute madhouse, or it was an absolute madhouse because we don't have to deal with that anymore.
That's right. We step right outside the press box, and the interview room is right there. It's amazing. It's incredible.
It's one of the coolest things, and I said we're going to talk about it. We'll talk about it for 2 seconds. Aber, one of the coolest things, though, is that now we are moved up into the Oklahoma end zone. If you're in the Oklahoma end zone looking toward midfield, we're situated left of the tunnel between the first level and the second level. Still a press box, so it's kind of like muted. There's not a ton of atmosphere usually in a press box, which is great when you're trying to focus and write, but sometimes you don't get like the full atmosphere, which is why we default to Carson a lot of like, hey man, it sounded like it was probably loud, but how did it feel? One of the really cool things, because we're stuck in between, we know that years and years and years ago when they expanded the upper deck and they put in the metal bleachers, that everyone like stomps and stuff just to try to create some extra noise. Well, when people stomp, instead of getting like Jeff Levy was a serial stomper, his coaching box was right above us. If Oklahoma would like miss a receiver in the middle, you could hear him stomping. Whoever was right above Hoove and I was a Jeff Levy level upset multiple times, just like big stomping because that came through clear as day. And I was kind of cracking up because you could get the full vibe of the emotions, the highs and the lows that the Oklahoma end zone was going through because of all the stomping and noise. It was kind of cool.
I thought the asbestos was going to come down on top of us.
So, Hoove, what you're telling me is it was a little reminiscent of the Mike Stoops days?
Yes, in Kansas State, yes. In Manhattan, Kansas, yes.
Well, unfortunately, we have
bottles were flying out of the upper deck. So yes, it devolved into that particular day. Woof.
So in the first 5 minutes, we've done press box talk. We've talked about an OU Texas game that Oklahoma's lost. We've evoked the name of Mike Stoops. There are no listeners left. Nobody's left. Everybody's gone. They've turned it off.
Good stuff's coming up.
If you're still with us, we did talk to Ben Arbuckle and Brent Venables yesterday on Tuesday. We talked to a bunch of guys on Monday night, including John Mateer, a bunch of those. Let's dive straight in. Aber, I know we didn't get your thoughts after the game, but I assume one of your takeaways from the Texas game was probably, hey, we had talked about the running game. We had talked about everything that Oklahoma has not been able to do so far on the ground. And Saturday was a little bit of the worst case scenario. John Mateer, slow processing, like he said. He talked about his eyes being in the wrong place. I would say that also correlates to just being a step slow for a guy that was 17 days off surgery. And Oklahoma's rushing attack against a good Texas defense, but unable to do anything to help him out. It was kind of all on Mateer. And when Mateer isn't locked in, isn't on, you see the issues that could be there for Oklahoma's rushing, or for Oklahoma's offense in general. Got to get that rushing attack going. Let's start with the good news. Derek Simmons, the offensive tackle who went down, Brent Venables did say he was day-to-day, so Wednesday night availability report. I don't know if that means he'll be probable, questionable, doubtful, but it doesn't sound like that's going to be a long-term thing. But Aber, well, we'll start there. Got to have that because I don't think the Luke Baklenko, Fasusi being one snap away from Daniel Akinkumi coming into the game, which we saw, is the recipe for success over and over and over and over again when you just talk about the tackle depth and how that's kind of taken a hit here progressively the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it seems like every year there's a position that you start off feeling really good about the depth, and then it just disappears into thin air. Last year we saw that with the wide receivers, the way that group was decimated. This year, we'll see how serious it winds up being, but the tackles are starting to feel like that with the depth that they've lost over there. We'll see how quickly Simmons is able to get back in there. Wasn't a particularly good-looking injury getting rolled up on, but it's one that you could maybe see him getting back this week. But either way, they've got to be better. Yes, the running backs have to be better and across the board, but they've got to be better blocking up front to create some of those holes. We saw some what we thought was positive progress against Kent State. Asterisk. Add that there, and then we saw that it was, I'm not going to say a fluke, but certainly something that took a step backwards last week against Texas, and it doesn't get any easier with the defenses that they're going to face. So they've got to figure out a way to be more effective on the ground, and it can't just be relying on John Mateer to be the totality of your ground game.
Yeah, good news is that there are not many defenses left on the schedule as good as Texas is on the high end, but this is one of those defenses that might not be front to back, all 11 of the guys starting that are as good as what Texas has up the middle, but certainly when you talk about Dylan Stewart on one side and Brian Thomas Jr. on the other, Brian Thomas, a guy that was in the mix, but he is already halfway through the season, basically matched his career high for sacks, matched his career high for tackles for loss, matched his career highs for total tackles. He's halfway through the season, one of those guys that has played a much bigger role after 6 of those front 7 for South Carolina moved on. And Hoover in this game last year, this is the game that was ultimately the tilting point, the splitting point for Oklahoma and Seth Luttrell. I think part of it was you start the game with 3 turnovers and it's 21-0 and the game's already over. There's going to be anger from the fan base, from the donors, all that stuff. But part of it, like we talked about, was kind of a game plan that no one really understood, which is why are you putting your tight ends heads up with Dylan Stewart, heads up with that South Carolina defensive line. And we've kind of seen so far Hoove now, this tight end group, not much better at blocking. And I kind of tried to, in a way where you're not attacking the coach or going to throw someone under the bus because the coach is going to shut down and not answer the question. But when we talked to Ben Arbuckle yesterday, basically the first question I asked him was, so your tight ends are not getting it done, and the offensive line sucks. So how can you, wasn't that negative, but the offensive line struggling, how can you help that group out without your tight ends being like a group that's positive in the run game? Were you buying what Ben Arbuckle was selling as far as how they're going to get that done this week?
No, I wasn't necessarily buying, because you're going to have to see massive improvement from over the course of 7 days. And that's not going to happen with a team that has not shown the trend or the tendency to improve over the course of 7 weeks, much less 7 days. And frankly, we're looking at a lot of the same problems that existed last year. The offensive line, just in general, you have the same O-line coach. The offensive line does not fire off and hit people, move people on short yardage plays. And when you go against Texas and you rush for 48 yards, and for the game you average 1.6, for the second half you average 0.4 yards per carry, that's not going to get it done. And we saw last year, I know that a lot of those guys have moved on, a lot of those guys are in the NFL, but we saw last year that South Carolina can play some high quality defense. If they do that again, and if Oklahoma doesn't establish a running game of any kind, it's going to be a long day for OU. I said this during the OU Texas game, and I actually kind of thought about it the week before when they were playing Kent State. And maybe they need to just go four wides. Maybe they just need to go four wide shotgun and run something called the air raid offense, which is what Mateer, that's the tree that he comes from, is the original Mike Leach air raid offense. If you need first downs and you got to move the football, you might have to throw a lot more than you want to in this offense.
It might be the way forward. The good news is the offensive line still has been, that's why the group doesn't suck. They stink at run blocking. They've been fine in pass blocking. Yeah. And I even thought against Texas, Carson, in a game where John Mateer does get sacked 5 times, that it felt like most of that came late in the game, post punt return, which Brent Venables on Monday night talked about. They submitted that in to the SEC. The SEC was like, yep, that's our bad. A couple missed block in the back calls, obviously pivotal as far as trying to get back into the game. But once that happened, Carson, and it was you have to throw the football, I don't know many offensive lines, good, bad, or otherwise, that can hold up when everyone in the building knows this is what you must do, and then you just kind of cut loose. But the issue it kind of comes back to is that is a great thought process and great scheme and things like that up until you have a moment where John Mateer isn't having a great day. And again, I think we all understand the reasons why he didn't have a great day against Texas. A little bit of the unknown is how much of it was the atmosphere environment, him being juiced up, versus how much of it was not practicing for 17 days. But Carson, that becomes where you get to the run game. It's just got to get to a point. It doesn't have to be the nation's best run game, but it has to be able to let John Mateer lean on something else, even if you're going empty or 4 wide.
Yeah, no, I'm hearing your point about the pass blocking. It wasn't dreadful. I mean, like you said, there's going to be more pressure when everybody in this 90,000 person stadium knows that you're throwing the ball. Yes, you're going to see more people in your face much quicker. So you can't fault the pass blocking too much for that. It's just going to happen. Good defenses like Texas are going to do that. But the run game, the blocking is not there. The tight end blocking is not working. It's really mind-boggling at this point that they're still trying to get some of these guys like Xavier Robinson the ball. He hasn't shown anything this year. Jaden Ott. That maybe we thought, okay, he had a decent game against Kent State. Maybe he's going to be a bigger part. I think the Texas game squashed all of those doubts. There was one missed block that he had. I'm not sure he even tried to block on that play. That's going to confuse me for a long time, just what his role on this team has been and how I very much don't expect him to be a big player on this offense in the back half of the season. I think they've got to try to lean on Torrey Blaylock. I think he's been their most proven back so far. Venables said he has MVP potential yesterday at his press conference, which maybe that's a little bit too high of a mark to set, but I do agree that Blaylock's been good. Even with a bad offensive line, he's done what he can. I don't think most of the rushing struggles can be blamed on him. I think he's a good back, but I also think that Arbuckle has to get creative. We've seen some of these swing passes work, the jet sweeps to guys like Deion Burks, Isaiah Satania. I mean, they've got some speed, and those have worked against Auburn and Michigan. It's not like those have only worked against Kent State, Temple, and Illinois State. Try to get a little more creative with it, because we've seen that this up the middle running thing's probably not going to work against SEC teams.
Yeah, creativity is going to be the name of the game, it feels like, for a lot of that, which is why you bring in a guy like Ben Arbuckle to scheme that stuff up. If you were watching back things like that, there were receivers schemed open that Oklahoma had that John Mateer just didn't hit, and that was kind of a big part of the material of it all this week, and we'll get to everything that was said there. Whether you get the Jaden Ott conversation, it's like whether you were pulled for the run play going that way, which should Deion Burks have gone outside? Yes. Does Jaden Ott at some point have to be a football player and realize, hey, Ant Hill is triggering right now, like he's going to hit someone right behind me. Maybe I need to make one step in that direction and try to get his way. Sure, but you have the drop pass, and then Jennie Carlson asked both Ben Arbuckle and Brent Venables about Jaden Ott on Tuesday, and the fact that both Ben Arbuckle and Brent Venables immediately pivoted to talk about Torrey Blaylock, I think tells you everything you need to know there. Arbuckle was asked about the running back rotation in general and who sets that Aber, and it was kind of just, he talked about all throughout practice. We really said a lot of that in our personnel meetings on Thursday. There's a moment where it's like, hey, I need Jaden Jackson and David Stone in here. He can summon it, stuff like that. But it really feels like going forward, it's going to be Blaylock and Xavier Robinson. It sounds like Xavier's okay from the sounds like a stinger maybe in the Texas game. So we've got that, and we have a mystery injury for Javonte Barnes. Britt Venables said, why was Javonte Barnes not in the mix of things? Because he said he pulled up with something in pregame. I can tell you this. So if you watch an OU pregame, you have all of the individual position groups warming up, and then they get together with, when we're in the live blog, I just call it like the first team reps and the second team reps. They do the walkthrough stuff, right? Of, hey, let's spread out. Everyone runs a basic route. We throw 7 footballs. Everyone catches it. Hey, we hand the ball off. No one's trying to tackle them. Blaylock was taking all of the running reps, and when Mateer was throwing it, Javonte Barnes was standing right next to him, which means that Javonte Barnes had to have gotten hurt somewhere between 5 minutes before going back to the locker room, walking up the ramp, and running out onto the field. So we'll see there. And Tatum, Brett was talked about, he's just had like one thing or another all over the place. It feels like it's going to
sideways with Bevo or what?
Yeah, I don't think Javonte Barnes is hurt. I'm just kidding. But anyway, he's played 4 games. We'll leave it there.
Yeah, good math.
But yeah, it feels like
I don't buy that either. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't buy that either. And the Tatum talk is a little bit strange given the fact that he hasn't been on an availability report, and the way that Brent talked about that. I'm not saying that he certainly was banged up before the season, but it's very clear right now that they're narrowed down on Torrey Blaylock and Xavier Robinson as their options there.
Which what didn't we get, guys? Last year, I think maybe somebody showing up unexpectedly injured, and Brent said, "Yeah, I think it was a hamstring thing." I mean, we've heard this before, and it turned out to not be a hamstring thing. Refresh my memory or save me here. Who am I talking about? I'm pretty sure it was last year.
Oh, yeah, it was. I'm blanking out. I think it was one of the running backs.
I think it was Javonte.
Yeah, I think it might have been Javonte.
Wow.
So I think the thing is, Brent Venables can lie to us in that setting, and it's okay. He can't necessarily lie to the SEC for the availability report. And that's what I'm saying. He was not being truly forthcoming, I don't believe, when he was talking about Javonte Barnes and the injury the other day.
Yeah,
you also had
I want to say it was after the main game. Remember, he hurt his foot, and it was like, "Hey, is he going back in? He's fine." What happened?
Yeah,
I think it was a hamstring.
Played the rest of the year.
Never played the rest of the year, right? Exactly. And I think he said about Barnes, I think it was a hamstring, which was weird. We were all like, "Hamstring? When did that happen?"
You also had the just an honest mistake of a guy being left off the report from the Ole Miss trip, as far as I forget which offensive lineman it was that ended up not making the trip. Might have been
Taylor, maybe
Taylor, because that's the game that Sexton got hurt in, I think. But anyway, I digress. Moral of the story is it's Blaylock and Robinson going forward, which Torrey was asked on Monday night kind of about like, hey, how hard is it to get into a rhythm? And Torrey, great dude, freshman, but great media training. He was basically like, that doesn't matter. I need to go in. And when I asked him just like, what do you think's missing with the run game? And he immediately went to like, I'm not pointing fingers. I was like, I wasn't asking you to point fingers. I was just asking like in general. I was like, but good teammate. I just wonder we saw with Xavier Robinson last year, when it finally was Xavier Robinson, he did all the stuff that Brent talks about, running through trash, all that. But it felt like you just finally said, we're going to feed one person. He gets into a rhythm. He can get into the rhythm of like, not every play is going to be blocked up perfectly. So he already is in the mindset of, I've got to be decisive. If I see what I think looks like a hole, I've got to hit it. I think that's only going to help John, even if the blocking gets significantly better, doesn't get better at all. Narrowing it down to saying Torrey Blaylock and Xavier Robinson, you two guys are going to have the opportunity to get into the flow of the offense and really build some rhythm, even if it's not fantastic. I think that's only a positive.
I would hope that 7 games into the season, DeMarco Murray has finally identified who his top 2 running backs are moving forward, 2025 and, hey, beyond even, right? A sophomore and a freshman. You would hope that that's the case. here's my thinking. Both of those guys showed last year and this year, several times already this year, that they are capable of getting out of the backfield, catching a pass on the run, over the shoulder, doing something with it, making people miss, running somebody over. They love doing that stuff. That's what I'm talking about when I say go 4 wide. And you can include Jaron Kanik in that as a 4 wide. He can be a guy that can come inside or stretch, find a mismatch, stretch the defense over the middle, whatever. But when you're talking about guys out of the backfield who have the ability, natural football player ability to catch the football and do something with it, that's part that Bob Stoops used to say it all the time. That's an extension of the run game. The little tunnel screen, throw it to a wide receiver, bubble screen. That's throw it to a wide receiver or Kanik or whoever. Probably not Kanik, actually. Probably keep that one going to a wide receiver or running back. That's an extension of the running game. That was one of the mantras that Mike Leach used to always talk about. So when I say 4 wides and a running back and just get creative, I know Arbuckle has that in his bag. He ought to be able to do that. And those 2 running backs that we're talking about have the ability to do that.
I think all of the tight end screens were burned after Seth Luttrell was. I think that whole play sheet was set on fire a year ago. Yep. One thing I love about Xavier Robinson too, and we've talked about at the end of last year and all that stuff, his ability to just like fall forward and run through stuff. I think he has like a really underappreciated set of hands. I think we saw again, he only had, was it just the 1 reception against Texas, but it was like one hand over the shoulder. Like he hauls in and brings it up. So I know that Danny last year when he would talk with us on radio was like, hey, that Xavier's awesome. He was fumbling early in the year, almost like this is why he wasn't playing early. And he said he had dropped a couple of passes, but when the lights come on, Xavier's hands are like really, really good, Carson. I think it's an underrated part of just something that maybe because he's a bigger back and we think about him falling forward, you're just like, is he going to catch it? But I feel like he's in game, at least. He's always shown the ability to make some difficult catches and not disrupt his flow and be able to get moving downfield.
Yeah, and he showed that in the Temple game. I know it was late in the game. They had already got the game won at that point, but he had a really nice grab, took that in, kind of bullied a defender on his way to the pylon. That was a really nice play. And Robinson, I mean, his usage it's been minimal so far this year. And when I say that he's maybe someone that hasn't really shown it this year, he hasn't gotten too many chances, to be totally fair to him. We've seen the whole Javante Barnes thing before his quote injury. That has not gone well. Blaylock's looked good for the most part when he's gotten his touches, but Robinson's kind of a question mark because back half of the year, obviously, especially in the Alabama game, he looked fantastic. I know that his catchability, his ability to make people miss in a few yards out from the quarterback catching screen passes, that can be huge, and that kind of goes into this creativity that I said that the offense needs for the run game, outlets of the run game, things of that nature. I think Robinson can be a really good weapon. Maybe if he's not the lead back, maybe he's not getting the most carries, but I think the screen passes, the short passes, I think he can be a big threat there.
Yeah, by the way, Xavier Robinson, 2 catches on Saturday. And you look at the play totals. Yes, he had 28 plays against Illinois State, 24 against Temple, but hadn't played much outside of that. And to get 20 snaps the other day, I thought was pretty significant, given everything else that's going on in that running back room right now.
And remember, Xavier was one of the guys. Remember when we went out to, was it the 3rd practice viewing, and it was basically like Torrey Blaylock and DeMarco Murray, and that was the Oklahoma running back room. Essentially, that was Xavier was one of the guys that had been banged up a little bit there in fall camp. So if that kind of contributed to his start to 2025, for lack of better phrasing, then there you go there. But hopefully, should have everything shaken off from again. I think he had a stinger there toward the end of the Texas game, but that should be good. And none of that matters, guys, if John Mateer doesn't get back to the guy we saw in the first month of the season, which was by no means perfect, but was more times than not able to know where the ball needs to go, able to make some adjustments at the line. And Carson, I know that you were there Monday night in the thick of the big, massive John Mateer scrub. What did he kind of say? Because on Sunday, Brent Venables confirmed he never really got into that good work, which is apparently essential to play football games for some people. But from Tuesday to Saturday, that philosophy changed.
Venables last week said it was, but
Right.
Brent Venables Saturday, apparently it's no big deal.
Which was the right decision still for me. That's not a wrong decision, but
I'm not saying it was the wrong decision. Just wasn't too thrilled with the way he handled it.
It was disingenuous, is what it was.
You have that, but
you can be disingenuous. Don't be a jerk and be disingenuous.
And you can be disingenuous and win. You can be disingenuous and win.
Yeah.
If you're disingenuous and get your ass kicked, that's a bad combination.
Yes. You've got to, there's certain paths you can go down. And Brent Venables was 0 for 3. He was disingenuous. He was a jerk, and they lost.
I'll always remember where I was sitting right next to Aber when Aber's typing. I don't think that's accurate when Venables was doing the good, all that stuff, and we had a good laugh. Delarian Turner-Yell, who was evoked, Delarian Turner-Yell being day to day as far as trying to rank the things I don't believe coming from the podium pregame. That was put up there, but regardless, we're on to Cincinnati. Getting John Mateer back up to speed. Carson, he did talk about the impact of days off at practice, not having days off at practice, trying to get back on time. What did everything John Mateer have to say? Because yesterday, obviously, Brent Venables and Ben Arbuckle fully backed him to get back into the swing of things.
Yeah, I really liked his mindset that he had at the scrum on Monday. He did not make any excuses, pretty much said my hand was a non-factor, even without practice with this much rust. I should have been better than that. My eyes weren't good. My arm wasn't looking good. It was a bad game, which part of me is like, I'm not sure how true all of that is. Like, I think it's pretty evident that there was a big rust factor that played into how he performed. I think it's very possible that his hand bugged him a little bit more than he or Brent Venables were getting off. But I like the attitude. You kind of have to do that. There are some quarterbacks that wouldn't take that accountability of like, yeah, I just wasn't good. And I like that as far as a leadership standpoint. Mateer, though, he's got to be better. You said it. This is a huge game. I know South Carolina was kind of the sliding point last year, very, very similar right after the Texas game. And Mateer, the first 4 games, I guess, for him, not a perfect quarterback whatsoever. Certainly some mistakes. I thought that first pick against Texas was very reminiscent to that pick he threw against Illinois State. That seems to be a pretty common miss, though. He just can't have the missing Deion Burks by 10 yards in the end zone. Can't have that. You can't have throwing behind Isaiah Satania by a couple yards, getting tipped and into a Texas defender's hands. He's going to have a full week of practice, though, and that bodes very well. He should, I'm not going to say he's going to be, but he should be a lot sharper than he was against the Longhorns. Definitely a good defense at South Carolina, but it's hard to say that that's a better defense than the one that he faced at the Cotton Bowl. But I feel like things really can't go a whole lot worse than they did, which that bodes well for the offense. There's still a lot of talent around him at receiver, tight end. So there's a lot of growth progression from what we saw in the Red River game to this week at Columbia, another hostile environment.
Yeah, Carson, we talked about this a little bit in the postgame. What tremendous leadership by John Mateer to step up in the postgame and say, yeah, the thumb didn't bother me. I wasn't rusty. He reiterated that on Monday. He reiterated that Monday night after practice in the media interviews. And that's the kind of guy that I wanted to play for. That's the kind of leader that I wanted to play for. It's tremendous leadership by your quarterback. And, if an offensive tackle says it, that's great. If a defensive linebacker or something like that says that's great. But when your quarterback stand there, surgical incisions on his thumb still showing, and he's saying, yeah, it didn't bother me. I just need to be better. I love that stuff. When I was a senior in high school, my teammate, our quarterback broke his index finger, and he couldn't hold the football. And we're sitting here getting ready to make a playoff run. Guess what he did? He said, Coach, put me at tailback. Let's cast this thing up. I'll carry it in my left hand, and we can go. And he took 61 toss to the left. And it was just like that dude. We all appreciated him for, the leadership and the toughness and the willingness to say, I ain't done. I'm not done. There's nothing wrong with me. Let's go. Let's move the other guy up to quarterback and he can toss me the football. We had a good run. And I'm thinking the same thing is going to happen to Oklahoma's offense. I think Oklahoma's offense is going to have a good run because of the leadership and the willingness and the toughness and the grit that John Mateer's showing.
So John Hoover is saying John Mateer is going to move to running back, and all the OU running issues are going to be fixed.
Yeah, it'll be Michael Hawkins running 69 toss out to Mateer, taking the ball and cutting up field on a sweep. That's 100%. I think a lot of fans would take that at this point.
I was going to say, getting Hawkins and Mateer, both their legs on the field, that might be the most effective duo of runners that we've seen.
Speed option all day long. Who's going to stop that, huh?
SEC defenses. Here's the thing that I think that was we were so focused, and this is we were all morons, or at least I. We were so focused on is he going to get back? Is he going to get cleared? When he played against Michigan, when he played against Auburn, was it perfect? No, but the prevailing thought was John Mateer can take the step up and take that level of competition up from Washington State to the SEC into an SEC style defense. Certainly can play winning football at that level. What maybe we overlooked was for a guy that's only played 2 games plus had 1 year of practice against an Oklahoma defense at that level where he can't be touched. How quickly can he mentally lock back into processing at that speed after missing 17 days where you're flying to get the surgery and coming back in and doing all the extra hand therapy and all that stuff? So maybe it's I don't think it's blind faith, because I think he played really well in the first month of the season, but I do think that he'll build back in and be a lot better. And that kind of also tracks with I know that a lot of people brought up the Jared Goff, hey, he played 12 days after the thing. And the first day people brought that up, and he played poorly. And then I think we lost the back end of that sentence as we went further along, just as we got in the mix, which I understand. And I was one of those people, but Jared Goff also played a lot better in that second game that he was back, even though they didn't win that one. I think that Mateer has a pathway to get back to what we saw pretty quickly.
Oh, absolutely. There's still plenty of faith in him. I agree completely with you, Hoove, talking about the leadership element to it and the way that he handled that. I think the physical part will come back as John Mateer returns to good on good practice here. And that hand will continue to heal, and he'll become or continue to be the quarterback that he was over the first part of the season. Now, the defenses are a whole lot better that he's facing here in the next portion of the season than they were in that early part, but still, John Mateer clearly has the tools to be able to be successful, and there's still, absolute faith in him that he will improve and be that guy probably sooner rather than later. I expect him to take a step forward this week. I think the biggest thing for him is, though, that decision-making needs to stay sharp. We saw that faltered a little bit last week at times. And, John Mateer's gotten unlucky on some of his interceptions, but also that decision-making needs to stay sharp because the margin for error gets narrowed significantly with what they're facing, what they faced last week, and what they'll continue to face here moving forward.
Yeah, you're right. I agree. I think his processing speed will be faster this week because he'll see it in practice all week. That speeds you up as a player, allows things to slow down a little bit when you're off for whatever it was, 21 days. So it's just a matter of just a matter of he's talked about his eyes. We mentioned what he's seeing, what he thinks he's seeing, what he's processing. When that all starts to settle in, I think he'll be 100% fine.
Also, another guy just worth noting that Giovanni Gibson's still working his way back in as well. Brent had talked about him again on Tuesday. He was asked just about a guy that was always open in the spring and all that. So excited to see not just Mateer work back his way back in, but I think we've far from seeing the best of Giovanni Gibson through 2 games, basically, just because played 23 offensive snaps against Kent State, up that to 33 against Texas. I think that'll keep ramping up in. So we'll see that. Be sure you're locked in this evening and Thursday evening, Friday evening, obviously. We will have the SEC availability reports, all that stuff. I believe Carson's on tonight's. So you'll be looking for the Derek Simmons official status, Logan Howland, how close is he getting back in? Does Javante Barnes pop up? Stuff like that. Otherwise, pretty good help there on the offensive side of the ball. Before we move to the defense, Carson, you were on the SEC teleconference today. Someone that's not played a role this year is not Giovanni Gibson, but Jaden Gibson. Last we kind of talked about him in the spring. Brent Venables had mentioned that he suffered a little bit of a setback with his injury recovery. Still had no update in the summer. Well, today, Carson, Brent Venables gave us the update on Jaden Gibson's status moving forward.
Yeah, Jaden Gibson, per Brent Venables, no longer a part of the program, and his name was listed on the roster still before the SEC teleconference. It is no longer there, so he's gone. Since then, On Three's Pete Nakos, I believe it was, announced that he's going to be entering the portal, which unsurprising. But Gibson, he's someone that OU fans didn't see last year at all because of a knee injury. Hadn't seen him this year for whatever reason that could be. It could be an injury setback, could be something else. Venables was not descriptive. He just simply asked, it was Tom Green's question over at 247 Sports. Ask him, where the heck is Jaden Gibson? Venables was like, he's just no longer with us. So not sure why, but Gibson did not play in any of the first 6 games. Biggest season came in 23 when the Sooners went 10-3. He caught, I think, 374 yards, logged 374 yards on 13 catches, had a handful of touchdowns. Since then, nothing though, and now no longer a Sooner.
Something we had talked about when he went down with that injury and confirmed it was the patella. It's just Thunder fans know about it. Not every injury is the same, but thinking Andre Robertson in that process, and I get that playing power forward versus wide receiver, big different, all that, but just sucks. We always personally enjoyed talking to Jaden Gibson. He was always a delight to talk to. Unfortunately, and he was a guy that they were expecting big things of last year until he went down early in fall camp. So sucks for him, but looks like he'll be on the move. Hopefully he can work his way all the way back into playing football and be able to find a landing spot. It reminds me too, John, of Trace Ford a little bit. That Trace, with the first time we had talked to him, when he talked about something that went into his transfers, that he was just like, man, every time I walk out to the practice, it was like I went down here and I went down there and I went down there. And for him, I think it was like liberating to just not have almost like practice field PTSD from injuries that he's suffered. Jaden Gibson's had a couple of those. So hopefully for him, a little bit of maybe a mental refresh and maybe he can get his or at least finish that thing out getting on the field. But we will see, obviously, is that was a tough knee injury on Jaden Gibson. Flip it over to the defensive side of the ball. One of the big storylines this week has obviously been working on some of those small details, like Dominic Williams said on Monday night, working on some of the tackling stuff. Ryan, you wrote about the missed tackles and how Robert Spears-Jennings and Aber and Thomas kind of laid on that grenade after the Texas game. But Brent Venables had like a really, really long answer about fixing some of the tackling stuff. What'd you kind of make of that?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, and it made me think back to the Alex Grinch, Lincoln Riley days when we were asking about tackling pretty well constantly. This defense has been fantastic this year. There's no two ways about it. But I think because they've been so good in every other area, that some of the tackling issues have been sort of glossed over. And not that they've been horrible tackling to this point, but they haven't been at a level. I mean, I wrote about it the other day. They're in the top 10 in pretty much every defensive category when you look at the NCAA stats and the stuff that they keep track of. But then you look at the tackling on Pro Football Focus, and it's way back in the 60s. And it just hasn't been as sharp, but they've been in such good position that even when they miss tackles, those guys are generally getting pulled down, a yard or two later, rather than breaking them and taking them to the house. So it's something that has to be fixed or has to be improved upon here moving forward. Again, I've said this, it seems like every time I talk today, the schedule gets a whole lot harder here moving forward and starting last week. And they've got to be sharper at those things because, that 1 and 2 yards can turn to 3 and 4 and 5. And then that can turn into, busted plays really quickly. And generally, the guys that struggled last week are Mason Thomas, Robert Spears-Jennings. I think Kobe McKenzie had 2, if I'm not mistaken, as well. Those have generally been guys who have been pretty sharp overall. So they need to get better and stay on top of it, because if the offense takes a step back, then that defense is just going to have to pick up even more slack, and those things are going to get magnified.
guess the good news there is like Dominic Williams talked about the details multiple times. That was like details, details, details. The gist of that on Monday night. And Carson, you wrote about it today. OklandSooners.com is the website. Always free. Containing LaNorris Sellers, like for Oklahoma's defense, if you want to get back out there and get after it, rush lane integrity, making sure you bring a guy down as opposed to letting him escape the pocket off to his right and roll and throw downfield. If you want to right all those wrongs you felt you had against Texas, it feels like a really good situation against South Carolina because while I think we all really, really like LaNorris Sellers a lot, the stuff around him hasn't gone as well. This offense is in the hundreds in rushing offense, hundreds in total offense. They're a little bit better than that in scoring offense because they score on special teams, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But it feels like it's almost the perfect get-right opportunity because it's a quarterback that didn't really like torchy last year because he didn't have to when you're up 21-0 in a flash, but a guy that is good enough to command everyone's attention while also asking some of the same questions that Texas asked.
Taylor Wine talked about it on Monday night, saying that there's things that OU's defense can learn from playing Arch Manning 1 week before and now playing LaNorris Sellers. Both bigger quarterbacks, both can run the ball. Obviously different kind of weapons, but there's some similarities too, just with the size, what they can do with their legs. And it's worth noting, though, that Texas also had kind of a limping offense coming into the Red River rivalry game. Arch Manning had not been great, and OU's defense made him look awesome, even if a lot of it was Quintravion Weisner. Manning did his job, very accurate, used his legs a couple of times. LaNorris Sellers' stats are not as eye-popping as they were last year, and a lot of that is the product of some dysfunction around him. I know South Carolina just fired their offensive line coach, so their offense isn't perfect, but we know the player that LaNorris Sellers can be. When he gets even a window of time, he can be really dang good. He's quick, he has a lot of arm talent, probably a first-round pick in the upcoming NFL draft. So it's going to be a challenge, and the defense needs to just take as many of those negatives that popped up in the Texas game, whether that's tackling, pass rush, coverage. Use those, learn from those, get whatever coaching you can from BV about that, and just apply it to stopping a weapon like LaNorris Sellers.
Yeah, you guys, I was kicking around in the South Carolina game notes, and I found an interesting statistic. In the 100 and whatever year history of the National Football League, there's been 3 South Carolina Gamecock quarterbacks who have won a game in the NFL. Some dude named Bill Troop. I'm not familiar with that name. Anthony Wright. I actually covered some of his games with the Cowboys. And a young man by the name of Spencer Rattler is the latest Gamecock to win a football game in the National Football League. That's going to change pretty soon when LaNorris Sellers gets in the league. Okay, he's really good. I did hear a couple of comparisons this week that stunned me a little bit. When I think on Monday night, Brent said he reminded him at times of a guy by the name of Adrian Peterson. And then the comparison of Cam Newton came up on Tuesday at the press conference. I'm like, hold on. Okay, hold on. Let's tap the brakes a little bit. He's good. He's really good. I don't know if he's a generational talent like those guys are. Come on. So Oklahoma's got its hands full on defense. Aber, what you said before about the missed tackles is 100% right. You would have, throughout the first 5 or 6 games, they covered it up beautifully. You would have a guy miss a tackle or 6 yards deep in the backfield, and he would squirm his way for another 2 yards or 3 yards or 4 yards, and it would still be a tackle for loss because there's 8 guys standing around him dragging him to the ground. But the first one missed him. And so that's been kind of percolating a little bit. And then we saw him miss officially 10 tackles against the Longhorns. I think on the Oklahoma Breakdown podcast, Teddy Lehman said he saw 12. I would probably grade it a little harder and probably say 15, but we'll go with PFF and call it 10.
I think that Teddy said he had 20 and that he was
20?
grading like, and that Teddy was like, and maybe I was angry grading a little bit in there, but here's what's going to be really, really important though, is need to be able to get out of that because Jacobs, South Carolina's leading receiver, 6 foot. He's one of those big bodied guys. Nick Harbor, incredibly fast and 6'5". And while this is not disrespect to Nick Harbor, I don't think he's like Cam Coleman because There's only like one Ken Coleman out there in college football, and a couple guys like in that bracket. Despite the fact that they've struggled, they've still got the physical tools of if you let LaNorris Sellers drift out and you're not, you don't keep that rush lane integrity, like he will have some targets that are the type of player that have kind of hurt Oklahoma's secondary at times this year when you think back to a Coleman type situation and things like that. So I do think that's really, really, really important. Like you guys mentioned, though, South Carolina, that Oklahoma, I think Brent Venables mentioned this not to like excuse it, but he's like, you look around the SEC and I did not realize that there are some other teams that you might not expect that are like in the neighborhood of us when he was talking about like the rushing issues that they've had. Alabama, Oklahoma, LSU, South Carolina, all in the bottom 40 in rushing yards per game of college football. So I don't think Brent Venables is taking any solace in it, but he's like, it was nice to, I guess, see that there are other people that are like working through stuff right now. And South Carolina is one of those teams. Here's the big like X factor though. One thing Oklahoma has not been good at, and that's been against Texas certainly, and it was magnified against Texas. -9 for the season. Turnover margin, they only got the 2 against Kent State, and when you just talk about interception here, interception there, a flub on a punt, things like that. South Carolina, the reason that they are not in the hundreds in total or scoring offense, where the rest of some of their offensive metrics are, is because they're turning the ball over. They're turning the ball over at a really high rate. I think Brent Venables said they're plus 12 if haven't like triple checked on that. But when you look at the special teams, which they have had 3 different touchdowns scored, non-offensive touchdowns, thanks to special teams, things like that. Aber, it's the old we're just gonna slap Beamer ball on it, but it's accurate. South Carolina is good in some of the at the margin special team stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you expect out of a Beamer coach team, whether that's Shane, whether it's Frank. And they've been really good at being able to cover up some things with special teams play and the turnovers. Unfortunately, I was trying to look up the turnover margin, and the NCAA site is not cooperating with me.
2 seconds on the NCAA site. The NCAA site, I understand it goes down when they update. It has been down more this year than it ever has been before. And I just hope everything's okay at the NCAA office. That's all.
Yeah, it's it would be a shame if they didn't have enough money to pay the web developers to get this thing in there. But luckily for us, Sports Reference still is up. And they've only, turned the ball over 6 times themselves, forced 12 turnovers, recovered 4 fumbles, 8 interceptions for the Gamecocks. So certainly something to watch there with, some of the interception issues that Oklahoma's offense has had. But yeah, they've had an interception in every game this year except for one, that being the South Carolina State game. So they have, and they've had 2 on the 3 occasions. So certainly something to watch this weekend, their ability to, get the ball back. And anytime you have the ball in LaNorris Sellers' hands, even though their offense has struggled, hasn't been as good overall as maybe it was last year, they can still be dangerous.
Guys, watch out forget about LaNorris Sellers for a minute. He might not ever see the football if Vakari Swain is returning the punts. Did you see he's got 3 punt return touchdowns this year, 2 in one game? 3 touchdowns in one season on punt returns is the most in the NCAA since 2017. That guy can fly, so he's a real problem.
Yeah, Swain's someone that Brent was highlighted both on defense and on special teams. That I think Brent's just talking in turnovers forced, then -9 as far as like turnovers that have occurred for Oklahoma. You look at it too between Swain, between Dylan Stewart, between Brian Thomas. It's gonna be one of those things, Carson, where this is when Brent Venables talks about like the SEC 1 possession league, and obviously he had the tangent that got him in trouble by the Big 12, I guess. Which I'm sorry, I just have no thoughts on either. Everyone gets to have fun on Twitter, I guess. Whether you want to pick the 2000 through 2022 or just the 22-23, whatever you want there. This is the difference, right? On the bad teams in the Big 12, you don't often have a Swain, a Stewart, a Thomas, a Harbor,
Right.
like stuff like that. It doesn't matter who you're getting in SEC play, much less a South Carolina team that Oklahoma's trying to get its lick back against.
Do you think they're letting Bob Bowlesby do the Twitter for the Big 12 these years? No,
He doesn't know how to tweet, John. He
He
can't
doesn't?
figure it out.
Is it can we assume it's an intern then doing the Twitter account?
I like to imagine
You don't think it's Brett
Yormark
Yormark standing there doing the little, oh yeah, this is going to get him. You don't think it's Yormark, do you?
It's not Brett Yormark.
But he signs off on it. He signs off on it.
Exactly. This is the kind of thing, to sort of get off on a tangent. This is the kind of thing that Brett Yormark wanted to bring. And there's, the games in Mexico, the games overseas, the entertainment factor when you talk about the championship belts and the concerts and all that stuff. I think this is just an extension of that. I sort of thought it was funny, if nothing else, but the Big 12 had a point, and certainly made it, but Brent Venables had a point too, in what he was saying, and there was a not insignificant amount of time where the only thing Oklahoma had to worry about was Texas in early October, and if they were able to take care of that, they were going to be able to win the league. And not the case at the end, certainly, but it was the case for a long, long time in the Big 12.
Yeah, for 20 years, Bob Stoops ruled the Big 12, 14, and tack on Lincoln Riley, 14 conference championships in 28 seasons. I mean, that's absurd. Nobody should dominate a league like that, and Oklahoma did it forever. And Venables was a big part of that. He was the associate head coach after Mike Stoops left. He was the defensive coordinator after Mike Stoops left. He was a part for 7 of those conference championships, a major part of those 7 conference championships. So you're talking about a team that rolled through conference play for 20 years, averaging 25 points per conference victory. I mean, as he said, they destroyed people. That's not available to them anymore in the SEC. That was his point. That was 100% valid. And I don't think he took necessarily a shot at the Big 12. I just think he was saying, hey, this ain't like it used to be for us, for Oklahoma. But I do applaud the Big 12 for clapping back, and I think they should be applauded for that. But clap back with something that's relevant. Like Brent's record as a head coach in 2022 and 23 has nothing to do with what he said, quote, the old days of the Big 12, the Big 12 old days. That's that's like, I know you are, but what am I? It doesn't have anything to do with anything. Why would you bring that up? I mean, it's true. It's 100% true, and he should be taken down for it. But that particular fact is not germane to the argument that he's making.
No, it's not. But you also clap back with the information that's available to you and the information that's available to the Big 12 and to whoever's running their social media team is Brent Venables' record against the league. And no, it's not relevant to the point, but the whole thing is the point doesn't matter. At that point, it's, what have you done for me lately?
Mm-hmm.
And, what Brent Venables did for the Big 12 lately was, not much anything.
Yeah, especially in the discussion of one possession games. That's the question that Barry asked. And it's like, oh God, he's 3-6 in one possession games in his last 2 years in the Big 12. He better not go too far down that rabbit hole, but he did.
I personally look forward to the Big 12 tweeting about Kansas's record in NCAA tournament games in 5 years when they leave for the Big 10, and the Big 12 just is a carcass that's being dragged to and fro across Middle America. But that's neither here nor there. The moral of that story, Carson, is fun athletes this week in a game that Oklahoma absolutely has to have. It's one of those things, Carson, right, that if you told anyone coming out of OU Texas, you're 5-1, they would have just blindly taken it at the start of the year. Much like I think most of us picked Oklahoma to go 4-0 in the month of August plus September, but the way the defense was playing, it felt like a little bit different. It's one of those things that the way the offense didn't perform against Texas leaves an extra sour taste in your mouth. But the thought process of it's only one loss, nobody freak out, all that stuff only applies if you can win this game. Because if you can't win this game, South Carolina is the worst team left on Oklahoma's schedule. It's plain and simple. They're not a bad team, but they're the worst team left.
Yes, I agree with that, and it's one of those things that this is such a necessary game to win, considering how some of those wins have aged. Michigan looks a little bit fraudulent at this point after getting absolutely clobbered by USC this past weekend. Yes, on the road, but that's still a good, not great USC team that they lost by 20 points to. Auburn, they're up and down. Looks like their defense is pretty legit, held Georgia to 20, but at the same time, they're 3-3. I mean, OU has good wins. They don't have great wins yet. I'm not sure South Carolina, the way they look, would be a great win, but it's necessary to beat a team that I know Aber and I talked about this at availability last week, that the rumors of South Carolina's downfall may be a little bit exaggerated. I mean, this is still a good football team. Shane Beamer's still a very good coach. I mean, it's not an easy game to win, especially at a place like Williams-Brice, but it's one they should win. They are the better team. Mateer, assuming he's a little bit less rusty, this is a game that they should win and they need to win just because 6-1, a lot better than 5-2, especially with Bama, Missouri, Tennessee, Ole Miss, LSU all still on the schedule. I mean, that is a gauntlet. Any of those would be great wins later in the season. So getting a good win is the first way to get on the right path, get some momentum before playing against all of those stellar teams.
It'll be huge. Carson and I will be out there. Just a heads up, not that anybody cares. I know that we usually like timestamp the live blog during the game. I try to mentally keep those times Central Time since most of us are reading it from Central Time. If I get those wires crossed with Hoover and Aber and everybody who's helping us out with coverage from back home, my bad. That one's going to be on me. 11:45 Central is the kickoff time there. SEC Network is the station. We also now know officially, we knew the Ole Miss game was going to be in the early window, much like the South Carolina game. Was it going to be 11? Was it going to be 11:45? What's the designation? Oklahoma will take on Ole Miss the following Saturday at 11 a.m. That game will come on ABC. We'll have three of us there, the squad, per usual, I believe. We will see as we get closer there. If you see Carson and I out and about in Charlotte on Friday night, first off, great spot, I guess. That feels like a very narrow group, but say what's up. We'll be bouncing around. And we'll be going in and out and experiencing the State Fair of South Carolina, I suppose. So we got back-to-back-to-back State Fair weekends if you happen to catch the happenings in Oklahoma before we headed out there. We'll have all the usual stuff. Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com for all the written content. We'll have all the videos from everybody that speaks, all that fun stuff, Carson's highlights, as well as, per usual, if you head to Hoover's YouTube page, John Hoover Media, that will be a good spot to catch everything from the trip out to South Carolina. We're not done with that today, though. Depending on when you're listening to this, if you're listening to it Wednesday and it's before about 7 p.m., I will be at Love's Field for Oklahoma and Oklahoma Christian, the second team v team scrimmage, I guess, or exhibition. Oklahoma was at East Texas A&M last week. We'll have everything there as far as the live updates if you're interested, because I know that game's not being streamed. I'll also have some takeaways from that. And then after the game, we are scheduled to talk with Patty Gasso about her squad. So you will have that video, John Hoover Media, on YouTube and on the website. Thursday, I'll have like a full story from all Patty's quotes. But if you know me, I will be on the radio at 6 a.m. the next day and 10 innings plus a post game and all that stuff. Sorry to make everyone wait. I get it. Friday night also Battle Series contest. Since I'll be in Charlotte, we're going to surprise Patty Gasso with the great Ryan Aber. And she's going to be like, I thought we got rid of you. What is happening? He'll also have live blog. He'll have some takeaways, all that stuff. So that one is a Battle Series game, inter-squad scrimmage. Tonight's, Wednesdays, is a Oklahoma versus Oklahoma Christian 10-inning exhibition. Like we said, all that stuff up on the website, Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com. And it's a busy Wednesday around. It's SEC Media Days for basketball. Who's going to have the coverage there for both Porter Moser and Jennie Baranczyk? John, we saw that Oklahoma, the secret scrimmage against Texas Tech, which the scrimmages are neither secret, I guess they are scrimmages, but they're secret scrimmages, and we find out immediately after how that thing went. Oklahoma upends the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Nigel Pack sounds like he had a really, really nice day. The Sooners are going to do something really, really fun, something I'm looking forward to, John. Usually these exhibitions, you bring in like a Rogers State or something like that, and we get to see everybody, which is great, but a little bit of an NIL element. They're headed over to Pfizer Forum where the Bucks play. They're going to take on Wisconsin. That's not this Friday, but next Friday, I believe. very, very excited to like see that caliber of team for competition in an exhibition of what should be a fun year on both the men's and women's basketball side, with expectations heightened for both teams following last year.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a fun season for Oklahoma basketball fans. I'm looking forward to getting hearing from Porter tonight this afternoon. I think they speak at 4:10 or 4:20 this afternoon from SEC Media Days. And I look forward to hearing from him, in an official capacity, talking about the rebuilt roster and the number of newcomers he's got, the transfers, the stars. Because I did take a look at the all SEC team. No Sooners on the first team, no Sooners on the second team, no Sooners on the third team. So I think OU is picked to finish 12th in the league this year. So I will be eager to see what Porter Moser has to say about both of those things.
Carson, I'm excited for you'll be doing a ton of our men's basketball stuff again, which should be fun. That's a group that rallied toward the end of last year, and certainly a much different vibe as far as the portal goes. I don't know if that's a Trae Young, his donation plus everybody else getting involved, or if that's just the university making a concerted effort to really back Porter, or a little bit of both. But it's certainly it just feels a lot different when you're talking about we're not having to project a bunch of these guys. It's, hey, can Nigel Pack get back from an injury? Hey, can guys step up into a bigger role from like Alabama to Oklahoma as opposed to some of the other spots? And it should be a team that is much more athletic and can really hang athleticism wise with the competition they're going to see in the Southeastern Conference.
I think the buy-in's pretty high right now, and we talked about early in January, I know when SEC play got off to a really rough start, maybe there's some blame to point Porter Moser's way. On the flip side, he deserves a lot of credit for how the team ended last season. I mean, even the NCAA tournament, yes, they lost first round. Also to the defending national champion, though, they kept close in that game, finished really strong in conference play, and really cemented their status as a tournament team. And I mean, Fears was good, yes. Jalen Moore, great player, great athlete. I really like what they did, just kind of revamping this team with the portal, losing some guys in the portal. Duke Miles, I think, finally settled on his fifth portal destination. But that's here nor there. I think this team should be pretty fun this year. Darion Reed, that's someone I'm very excited to see a little bit of this year. Nigel Pack, Tay Davis. It's a good class, and I think this team's going to be at the very least competitive and should be on the favorable side of the tournament. But that's still several months out, so I don't want to make too many bold predictions about OU basketball quite yet.
If you look at the batch of Kimpom stuff, they were projected to be about the same spot that they've been in a couple of these years, which is like a fringe team going in. But we'll see. Obviously, just from the jump, it feels like a much more capable guys as far as getting that up to speed. On the other side of things, Jennie Baranczyk and crew, they'll be going here pretty shortly as well. Aber and I'll have a ton of that for you this year. Got Reagan Beers, Peyton Verhulst, Sahara Williams. That's the trio that headed out to Birmingham. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, it looks like Aber, we might get our first chance to talk with those players, as well as top overall recruit Aaliyah Chavez here early next week. That's not official, so please don't nobody tell on me for saying that aloud, but I'm hoping that we're approaching that, which again, whether you look at ESPN's preseason poll, Aber, or the preseason AP Top 25, Oklahoma comes in at number 6 in the preseason, which last year so much of it was raising expectations with Reagan Beers. It feels like this is you made it to the Sweet 16. Now, how far can you go, especially if you get the correct seeding, Aber? You could go Norman for the first 2 rounds, 2 chances to land in a Fort Worth bracket to try and punch your ticket to get out to Phoenix and really make it to a Final Four.
Yeah, this is a team that, not going to say Final Four or bust, but certainly like the Sweet 16 last year was sort of the overall arching goal. Yes, you want to make it to the Final Four, but the Sweet 16 felt like a good benchmark for that team. This team, it's sort of the floor, and they bring back virtually everybody from last year. Obviously, lose Skylar Vann there, but you add Aaliyah Chavez, and you add. I think Zaya Vann is certainly positioned to make a leap after last year. I think Reagan Beers can add some elements to her game, and the way that it took a while last year for them to sort of acclimate around her and her to acclimate to Jennie Baranczyk's system. I think this team has potential to be much better defensively overall, And maybe we'll see how much they protect the ball better. I know the turnovers are just sort of a byproduct at times of Jennie Baranczyk's system, but this should be a really fun team to watch and a team that can go at you so many different ways. They've got a chance to be really special. And I think, certainly not going to say that they're going to be a Final Four team, but they've got a chance if things fall right and they progress the way that they've got an opportunity to make a run like that.
I would not say no to finally getting my trip to the Camelback because Oklahoma football's not delivered that before they exited the Fiesta Bowl ties and all that stuff. So,
don't hold your breath because I've never been. Eric Bailey and I, that's our big point of contention that we've never been to the Camelbacks.
Well, if they go to Phoenix for the Final Four, guys, it's going to be a party. It's going to be a Sooners on SI party because I am going. I am unretiring, and I'm going to spend a week in Phoenix.
I think I may have to tag along too.
You'll be there.
4-man crew sounds about
You'll
right.
be there. Guarantee it.
Hey, but the size of the rooms at the Camelback, we might all just be able to pile in, right?
That's right. One room.
Especially if Hoover goes back to the desk apparently instead. This is not correct.
I am underwhelmed.
I am completely underwhelmed by this room.
Classic.
You don't get to be lifetime titanium by rolling over and taking it from Marriott. You got to tell them. You got to stand up for yourself.
This is true.
One day I'm going to assemble the list of like road stories that Hoove has to tell so that like the podcast knows Hoove just walks around and just goes, I will take your penthouse, please and thank you. Yeah. And they give him the penthouse with the mountain views. But
Ryan, you'll come to appreciate this someday, I hope. But I've told you this before. All the road trips I've taken in 40 years, all the road trips, I've never come back and said that was a terrible road trip. I did not have a good time. That sucked. I have always had a good time on these road trips when I go with you guys, hang out with you guys, make memories with you guys. And I promise you, every road trip, I heard you talking last week about, got to go to South Carolina. I'm like, Columbia, South Carolina is awesome. Starkville is awesome. Go and have a good time. It's all about positive mental image, guys.
And here's the deal with that also. So many times you go to a place that you don't think really highly of.
100%.
And then you find either a great place to eat or just a really cool community. You know, I think to Spokane when OU men's basketball went there in 2014.
Yep.
And there were so many great options that year. OSU got sent to San Diego. And I was so jealous of John Helsley at the time at the Oklahoman getting to go to San Diego and was grumbling about Spokane for a variety of reasons. Spokane was phenomenal. Found some great little places there. The downtown was fantastic. So hopefully Columbia can be a place like that for you, Ryan Chapman, this week.
Spokane was phenomenal. And I'll tell you another quick story on that Selection Sunday. I'm covering the Razorbacks and I'm sitting there 98, 99 season. I'm sitting there looking at the TV going in the conference, the newsroom, break room, basically there's refrigerators and sinks going on and people are making coffee. And I'm sitting there going, please not Boise, please not Boise, please not Boise. Razorbacks went to Boise and I'm like, what the? Turned out to be the only of the 8 regionals that weekend, the only one, unbelievable, where the sun was shining. It was raining or snowing at every other regional. And I went skiing up on Bogus Basin on the off day, and the Arkansas Razorback cheerleaders were up there skiing, and they were like, who are you? I'm like, I'm the Tulsa World Arkansas reporter, and was hanging out with the Arkansas cheerleaders. It was the coolest trip of all the NCAA trips, and I'm sitting there going, please not Boise. So, yes, every trip you take, you young guys especially, every trip you take, it is what you make it, and you're going to have a great time in Columbia this weekend, guys.
And I'm glad we have a boss that approves some gaudy expense reports. Thank you. Because we do not skimp on what's the best restaurant you guys have in town? Yes, we'll take, please. We'll be in Charlotte this time. I'm excited for the Charlotte. I've never been to I've been to Charlotte airport a couple of times, but never stepped outside of the airport in Charlotte. So
it's a pretty town. It's a very pretty city.
Well,
been there several times.
Whatever you find to eat there, Ryan, there's no way it would be better than the dinner we had last Thursday before y'all headed down I-35.
That was good, except for the fact that we were sitting there going, oh, John Mateer has been upgraded, and half of the Sooners on SI staff is just like stuffing our face at Moser. We're just like, well, okay. So we'll see that there. All of that to say, very excited for the women's basketball season. Can't wait for that thing to get going. My two big questions, really, for not just the biggest ones, like how good can Aaliyah Chavez be immediately, but what is going to kind of rub off on her this year when you have this bridge of Peyton Verhulst, Reagan Beers. You're still going to have Sahara next year with her, but it's like almost going to turn over and be Aaliyah plus Sahara, like veteran senior Sahara, stuff like that. Then the other question, which is like way more minor, is who's going to be the backup five? Because Liz Scott was, I thought, a really key, like you have a very experienced piece there that you could rely on if Reagan got into foul trouble or things like that. So it's also important to remember last year that Reagan, and Aber, you know this, Reagan went down in preseason camp, which kind of shortened the time that she had to actually get acclimated to Jennie's system and the other players around. So hopefully you will see some improvement there, especially when it comes to like turnovers and outlet passes, entry passes, stuff like that, because that's not going to have been an issue throughout this preseason so far.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch, how that depth factor plays out. You talk about who's going to be the backup five. Does Beatrice Culleton take a step forward? We saw some really good things from her, especially at the end of last year. But they've got some intriguing freshmen there as well, including 6'3" Brooklyn Stewart from Colorado Springs. OU has sort of developed a women's basketball pipeline there to Colorado with Reagan Beers. Obviously didn't come straight from Colorado, but a Colorado product. And then the French woman, I guess you would say. We'll see how big of a role she winds up playing, but it's going to be fascinating to hear Jennie Baranczyk talk about that today, hopefully next week, and then to see how it starts playing out early in the season. Because I think, she has a reputation among coaches that's really positive for a reason. And part of that is the way that she's able to bring her teams along during the part of the season where not very many people are paying attention to. And so I think it's going to be fun to pay attention to that portion of the season because of that this year.
Aber, I don't remember, is the French girl and the Irish girl both coming in this class, or is the Irish girl in the future?
They are both on the roster right now. So
both of them. Wow.
They've got
that'll be fun.
Ireland prospect from Virginia, Ireland. I didn't know where Virginia, Ireland was, but apparently Virginia, Ireland. And Dafa Sissoko, there's zero chance I'm pronouncing that correctly, from Dravel, Paris, France.
Uh-huh. Wow.
So I've heard of Paris.
Sissoko correct. The rest of it, we'll work on it. This is where my soccer background comes in handy. I've seen all of these.
You have an unfair advantage here.
I've seen all this before. So for everything Jennie Baranczyk, Porter Moser, everybody has to say who will have it. Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com is the place to be. And like we said, as we get some local media days firing up, we're about to be right in the thick of it. Crossover season, Thunder tip-off officially next Tuesday. We'll have some exhibition basketball at the end of the week, and we will be in the thick of it per usual. Oklahoma Sooners on SI is the place to be. Friends, does that cover everything? Have I missed anything, boys? I think that gets...
Russell Westbrook, Sacramento Kings. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk.
Russ, welcome to Sacktown. Enjoy. That'll do it for us. Be sure you're following along with Carson and I as we head back to the East Coast for the second time this year. We also got Aber and Hoover doing a little bit of everything all over the place. If you're like, this is a lot of things to follow, Ryan, I appreciate it. I have a life. I have other things. That's okay. I get it. On Twitter, @Sooners on SI. If you're on Facebook, just search Oklahoma Sooners on SI. If you see our logos, all that stuff, give it a follow. Every story goes out there. Easy way to stay involved. It'll pop right into your feed, all that fun stuff. And be sure you're catching up with us on the podcast. Carson and I will be talking to you post-game Saturday from everything that happens, good, bad, otherwise, from Columbia and all that fun stuff. Then we'll be back next Wednesday to recap everything Media Day, behind, obviously, the South Carolina talk, the Ole Miss preview, and all of that fun stuff. For Carson, for Hoop, for Aber, I am Ryan Chapman, and we will talk to you guys next Saturday. See ya.